Are the rating agencies solely responsible for the credit crisis?
No, no. There's plenty of blame to go around for who's responsible, and there's many entities that took part in this credit crisis. Are the rating agencies partly responsible? Yes. Their projections in some cases were probably too rosy, meaning their analysis that they performed to assign a rating to a particular security in many cases assume that housing values never go down, and we know in hindsight now that that's wrong. And they may have been gamed in some situations by the issuers of certain securities. But at some point in time, accountability cannot be completely transferred over to the rating agencies. The investor has to perform their due diligence. So if I'm an investor, even though I'm relying to some degree on the rating agencies to help me evaluate a particular credit, I have to do some analysis on my own, and I can't completely transfer my responsibility of that to the rating agencies.
Why is there so much attention and pressure on the ratings agencies right now?
The rating agencies are under a tremendous amount of pressure because we're right at the top of the global credit crisis. We're at the zenith, and everyone is looking for someone to blame. It's very easy to take a complicated problem and find one person. Let's find the villain. It's way more complicated than that. Certainly, the rating agencies are complicit, somewhat. I mean, they had ratings that really didn't reflect the creditworthiness of the underlying securities. Were their models deficient? Yes, in as much that you can't just project that housing price will always appreciate. So they have blame. I think they would be responsible for that and admit that. But they're not completely culpable. And I think the first person we have to look at is in the mirror. I think investors are responsible ultimately for their own decisions. So if you're making an investment decision, deploying capital as a prudent investor or as a reasonable man, you have to take some of that fiduciary responsibility seriously. And then when it doesn't work out, you have to look in the mirror and say, that's partly my fault. So it's easier to blame the rating agencies. I don't think we should get away with that. There's plenty of blame to go around.
Why did the rating system break down?
Well, I think what looks like a breakdown might really not be a breakdown. We've taken a rating system that was invented for single obligor securities like a railroad or canal company, which worked for 100 years. And then when we invented multi-obligor security, financial engineering, things get more complicated, we needed a way to keep track of those. So we said, let's take this rating system and apply it to that. So we took something for single obligor and applied it to multi-obligor. That really wasn't appropriate, but it was invisible until we actually had this crisis that's come up recently where housing prices actually declined. There were actual defaults in mortgage-backed securities. So there was a fault in the system. It only became apparent when we had housing prices starting to decline over the past 18 months. So there was a flaw in the system. We just didn't see it until very recently.